Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Girls, and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and today is the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month in the States. So I thought I'd just make some book recommendations. Um, and all the recommendations I'm putting forward are just books that I have on my shelf that I've read. So yeah, that was kind of like the best approach. So I'm going to start with some poetry, and I have quite a bit. Oh, this is all my poetry books. All right, so there's Jessica Salgado. I think she has only 3. If she has another one, I don't know. There's Corazon, there's Tesoro, and there's Hermosa. And she's Los Angeles based, Salvadorian poet. Unlike most poetry I'm going to talk about, it's autobiographical. So there's talk about love, heartbreak, and the fat phobia that they have to endure from others. And there's quite a bit of, I would say, like a conversation about body positivity, and also, how do I say it? Kind of like the macho, patriarchal attitudes that go on within her cultural experience. All these conversations I really, really enjoyed. Sorry, my cats. Can't see my cat, but they're crawling over here. I knew that was going to happen. There's also, this is a nonfiction essay collection called, my cat once again, Sana Sana, Latinx Pain and Radical Visions of Healing and Justice. I would say look up trigger warnings for this book. One of the essays that really like hit me is talking about a person going into a space for therapy, and I guess the psychology overall, or their experiences with therapy have not really hit the mark of exploring how to deal with the pain of society's ills, and how sometimes when let's say a patient is talking about being depressed, but really the depression isn't really necessarily coming from this internal physio place. It's actually coming from having to deal with like being oppressed. And so then the work then becomes the labor of dealing with that gets put on the person that's being oppressed rather than the other way around. And so what kind of tools can you gain, and what kind of cycles are being perpetuated, I guess. And this is all within one essay. And there's so much more that's discussed in here, but that one really stood out to me. So yeah, Sana Sana is really worth picking up. It packs the punch for being such a short essay collection. There's also Bad Mexican, Bad American. This is a short poetry collection. The style is prose poetry, and although there are so much about this that can be considered, once again, autobiographical or memoir-esque, as the poetry selection goes on, it gets more abstract, more surreal, and there's so much of a nod to the arts and the artists that the poet reveres, and it's just really, really cool. I would say that I did have took me time to get used to the voice in which the author was speaking through. So feel free to look up the author and listen to them recite their poetry. And my cat is now sitting in all the books that I want to discuss. So here we go. Here you go. All right. The next two are all by the same author, and that is David A. Romero. He's written Diamond Bars 2, which I have on hand, and My Name is Romero, and I also have a Spanish edition. Um, these are all autobiographical. This one more so. I mean, it quite literally is named after the author. Talks about their childhood to adulthood experiences, navigating their cultural identity. This also is an expansion of this, but focuses on adulthood and a love and engagement with their community, class issues, dealing with alcoholism and racism. And I found it just really moving. I'm telling you right now, both my cats, you can't see them. I wish you could. I'm not close enough to the camera to move it so you can see. But if I wasn't doing this, they would not be over here. But as soon as the camera comes on, now they're over here. All right. I didn't really categorize these, so hold tight. Let's talk about these two. There's The Undocumented Americans by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. I feel like I'm messing up her last name. I'm so sorry. I want to say it's nonfiction. It is more like an essay collection, and it's talking about how undocumented Americans are treated, and even the title itself is a complex conversation, and also talks about how are people valued, what are the effects of on undocumented Americans as well as undocumented refugees within that conversation, psychologically. And I found that really important and fascinating, and constantly urgent, prescient. A book that I found really healing is Borderlands, La Frontera, The New Mestiza by Gloria Anzaldúa. There's just a conversation about existing on the borders of two cultures, how one is perceived, identified, carving out space for oneself, and how with each person we all have our own identities and nuance, but we should be able to accept ourselves within the community. That's kind of like between the lines, but I thought it was beautiful, and there's definitely a mix of essays and poetry in here, and I really enjoyed that, like switching of essay to poem, because they inform each other and really helps me as a reader get a grasp of the poetry as well. So definitely worth a read. I'm trying to grab all the nonfiction while I'm at it. A book that I really loved is The Cultural Legacy of the Soldadera and Afro-Mexican Women, and it's titled Mexico's Nobodies by B. Christine Arce. This is more of an academic piece. I absolutely loved it. I love books when they're having a conversation about the nuances of identity, and also what the author digs into is that there are people, like specifically in the Black community, as discussed in the title, that like their existence isn't really how do I say this? It's not really like documented enough. It's not really defined. And in the census in Mexico, it's not identifiable. And, you know, all people within the Mexican diaspora should be celebrated and accounted for. And so the author digs into this history, also a nuanced conversation about the Soldadera and I really loved everything that the author was saying between historical fact and um, how their existence has permeated into pop culture and folklore and yeah, and all that, and what that says at large. So this is definitely, even though it's an academic piece, at some point I'm going to go back and read it again. All right. So there's this is like an anthology, Revolutionary Women of Texas and Mexico. Portraits of soldaderas, saints, and subversives. Clearly, I read this originally they're on the same time, so you know it was on my mind. And I just love getting an opportunity to learn about badass women in history, and definitely, when it comes to women, there's this ideological need to either put them as Virgin Mary types or like the devil incarnate, and people are just more nuanced in existence than that. And so I really appreciate every author's tackling the subject, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, and just like highlighting important people. And so, yeah, this is definitely worth reading. The next two books are by Carmen Maria Machado, In the Dream House, as a memoir, and also her short story collection, Her Body and Other Parties. What really stood out to me is that both these books have a cinematic quality to them. In The Dream House, it's really about this ideal of what maybe you want for yourself and what others want for yourself and think of your life as. But then there's the interior reality of that. And the interior reality for this author at this time was that they were like an abusive relationship. And kind of goes on from there. There's expands other conversations. And here it's a short story collection. And women are always the forefront. What I really love about this is, once again, just the cinematic quality. And if I remember, it's been a while, but it's like every single short story is like a different genre, a different take to express what they're trying to tell. And I felt like that was such an unconventional way to tackle what they're doing here. And it was just really incredible. And it's also just such I feel like a nod or like a love letter to cinema and television in a really cool way. So yeah, this is definitely a book that you could like, that will grip you, and you'll find that you're going to go through really, really quick. I'm trying to remember. This is a short story collection. It's called Chola Salvation by Estela Gonzalez. There's a book club. I'm trying to remember the name of the book club. No, let me not go there. I'm going to forget. This largely takes place, what's cohesive about this is that most of the short stories take place in East Los Angeles, some of them in Mexico, but largely in East Los Angeles. And one side of my family grew up, born and raised in East Los Angeles. So I felt like this is just more of a personal connection to the material. And I was just kind of, I don't know, it just felt nice. Like there was this nostalgic piece to reading something that felt so personal. But yeah, it really deals with like racism, machismo, and poverty. And just, I'd say generational trauma is definitely at the forefront. So this is a great collection. And I really need to actually go back and see what else this author has written, because they really tapped into something for me. Oh yeah. This is kind of like within the fantasy horror genre, Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is I felt like this was just such a vibrant take on vampire lore. Um, and this does take place in Mexico, and I can't remember. There's just like such a specific, unique take on the different regions and powers dynamics of vampires that I haven't seen an author take on in any of the um, within the vampire genre. That's really cool. And I love the main character that you're reading this through. They are a human that just kind of like stumbles upon the situation. So even though this is through the lens of a male character, Domingo, there is this, I guess you could say, like a female co-lead in this book that is a vampire. That's just really, really cool. And yeah, it just felt like you're kind of stepping into the life of a vampire for a little bit. And I really liked it. Anyway, so I'll leave that there. There's also within the horror genre, Pinata by Leopoldo Gout. They've written so many other books. This is the first one that I've read, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, because I saw an interview with the author, they've been in the film industry, I believe. I really like the conversation of this female lead going with their young kid, visiting to Mexico, and there's a conversation about the main character, yes, being of how do I say this? Being Mexican descent, but then raising a kid that there's kind of a switch, right? Of not just being Mexican American, but more like American Mexican, and this needing to like reconnect with culture, feeling the disconnection. There's also like element of like folklore and spirituality, and it's very specific to a certain part of Mexico. It's been a while since I read this, but I just liked how the author was getting into like a family, reconnecting with one's own culture. It was just like really beautiful in that way, all the while being within the horror genre that really like, I don't know, piqued my interest. All right. So Calling for a Blanket Dance is by Oscar Hokia. He is a citizen of Cherokee Nation, but on his mother's side, I remember him saying something like this. Oh no, Mexican heritage on his father's side. And so I'm bringing this up because that is also reflected in Calling for Your Blanket Dance with the main character. What really stands out to me in this book is his approach to writing about a character. The main character, how do I say this? You experience the main character, but through other characters. Every chapter is a different character. So from the main character being a baby to adulthood, and you really don't read from the perspective of the main character until like towards the end in adulthood. And I think that's incredibly important. I mean, when you look at the cover, it's called Calling for a Blanket Dance. And really have the, what do you call it? I don't know the technical, the paper when you're putting together a blanket. And that really just speaks to like how it takes a community, it takes your culture, people to raise a child and have those contributions. And so you're getting all this information and learning about how each person impacted this person that becomes an adult and informs their decisions as an adult. And I felt like reading the book through that lens was just so beautiful. And really like stood out to me. And although there are other books that are written from point of view, like each chapter is a different character, I felt like this was a unique take on it, to kind of like develop the narrative. So yeah, really, really beautiful. Yeah. All right. I wanted to double check. There's Woman of Light by Kelly Fajardo Anstein and also Sabrina Corina. The author is of mixed heritage. I don't have all the information at the top. I've watched so many different interviews with this author. So now I'm like trying to remember. Yeah. Either way, I wanted to bring these books up, especially Woman of Light. This takes place it, the genre is like it's written in like a western. But what I like about this is it takes place before parts of Mexico became the United States, and that's so many states became part of the United States, right? So I want to say it was like that Mexico Texas area, and so like the land is referred to like the like uncharted lands, um, and before annexation, and so you really get dipped into history from female protagonists um, as they navigate the lands and what they're going to do in their lives, and also a witness to discrimination. And what I really like about the author's take is I feel like I'm seeing reflected what America really is like, which is just multicultural. And so that's sometimes what's frustrating when reading specific historical pieces, um, works of fiction, is that, you know, maybe they'll want to talk about a certain topic, but we don't really get a sense of how multicultural the land is. And I find that very odd considering there's so much different migration that took place, like that should be reflected in the fictional work. And I felt like the author did that really well. Um, Also in the short story collection, which it's kind of hard to say. They're so different, but I felt like I really like the short story collection, and it really speaks to um, what women go through in a patriarchal society, and also at the hands of abuse at times. And there's different age groups that we're reading from, but this is absolutely beautiful, but really speaks to generations, lineage, and a woman's experience. And lastly, I wanted to speak about Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. They also wrote something of The Hacienda as well. But this is a vampire tale. And I really love when I'm reading. I guess I do really like tales about vampires. I really just like tales if it's a new, fresh take. And I felt like, once again, that's what's going on in this particular book. Um, Although this is called The Vampires of El Norte, the vampires aren't necessarily at the forefront. It's about the humans that they affect. So there's no like vampire protagonist. It's more about the people of Mexico. It's Nena and, oh my gosh, what's his name? Nena and Nestor. They're childhood friends. There's like a spark between them. Um, Something tragic happens when they're kind of like really young, and it scares Nestor, and he thinks that maybe Nena is like on death's doorstep, so he gets scared and he leaves and has no idea that Nena actually survives. So years later, as an adult, maybe like a decade or so later, as an adult, he comes back to his childhood village, only to find to be faced with this person that now thinks that he's abandoned her. And also yes, vampires come into play. But what I like about the conversation around vampires is there's this is how the author uses the vampires to really talk about colonization, about people, capitalism, uh, purchasing and stealing of land, and how that is really the true monster of the tale. And so, yeah, I have a lot of books here. Those are all my recommendations. I only wanted to pick books that were off my shelf. But you know what? If you have any recommendations yourself, this is what I got. Feel free to, without dropping it, feel free to make recommendations below. Let me know if there's anything that I need to check out. I would also love just recommendations from you. And yes, my cat has jumped on the cat tower and made it impossible for me to do this without a shaky camera. So thank you for everyone. I know this kind of turned out a little bit long to have my recommendations. But if you're new here, thank you for dropping by. I hope you stay and subscribe, like. If you're not sure or you don't really have a comment to make, but you want to support, go ahead and leave an emoji. Maybe leave a vampire. That's my cat right there. Oh my God. All right, let me end this stream. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the chat.